Welcome everybody to VG8, brought to you and powered by VIS. My name is Dragonborn, I'll be your host, and this is what normally is the off-stream game. It's actually going to be streamed here live on our VIS channels, on Mob Crush, on Twitch, and now on YouTube. I'm joined today by Denomine. We're going to be going through, getting into the games, breaking down the drafts, and casting for you guys, being able to bring you guys these games live for the first time ever day. Thanks for joining me, man, as we get into this pretty exciting day.
No problem. Thank you for having me. And yeah, it ought to be pretty exciting because I don't think either one of us have really had the chance to cast any EU games before. So
absolutely,
ought to be an experience.
It's going to be an interesting experience, and we've got a really exciting matchup today. We do have G2 going up against Rising Lotus. Now, normally, you know, these off-stream matches maybe aren't as popular, but G2 is, you know, one of the best EU teams. They made it the farthest during the Unified Championship, and now they're here to see if they can continue that run and be dominant here as they went into last season as first seed. We're actually ready to get into the draft. We really don't have much else to talk about. Welcome, everybody, to VG8. We will be bringing you guys the off-stream matches for both EU and North America on Saturday every single week. So if you guys want to catch these off-stream matches, you come over to here onto our VIS channels, and we'll be bringing them to you guys. All right, we're ready to start the draft. So let's get right into it, Day. As we start off, Rising Lotus is on A side, and they do look to get right into this timer here to see what they're going to pick. And now, you know, you and I haven't cast a lot of EU. The drafting a little bit different, but what we have noticed is that EU is really starting to adapt that more aggressive pressure. And we do see Baron coming off. Not surprising, Baron still that very dominant pick here across all the regions.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I try not to get ahead of myself on EU is Vox is one of those bands that we normally see in North America. It comes right off the table real quick, and then we don't see EU prioritize it, and we see this reflected here with this first pick, Lance, which gives the side of G2 the opportunity to pick up that Vox, who we know Hundor is very good on, and there it is right there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Lance pick was nice. Vox coming in here for G2 is a very solid pick, you know, as from a laning perspective. Of course, we have seen as weapon carries in the lane, Vox is definitely right up there, right behind Baron, but he can be Flex Crystal depending on what support they go and what composition they go. Right now with that Lance, you're likely to expect that Vox to stay weapon. The Samuel ban coming out, it tells us a little bit about what they really don't want to go into. That level 2 Samuel is really fearsome when you get into that early game.
Yeah, and I feel this has to be a little bit targeted. I don't really know too much about Hell's Devil on a Samuel pick, just because, you know, I'm not too familiar with Europe. So I have to think this is a little bit targeted because Samuel does have a early game spike, but he does have his easy counters too. So for example, Taka, Koshka are very good at shutting down Samuel in the early game, which can be used as a bait to draft. So it, you know, so maybe something that the side of G2 just knows the other team plays pretty proficiently and doesn't want to go into.
Absolutely. We see a Gwen pick up by Rising Lotus, and when you look at what's left on the board, your Blackfeather was gone and Vox was already taken. So Gwen, a great pick here. It's a little bit more conservative. We haven't really seen Gwen be that dominant weapon carry, but after you take Baron and Vox off the table, this is really definitely the next best thing. So definitely not a bad. We're going to get right into bonus time here as we get into the last pick for Rising Lotus. And, you know, you've got a Vox and an Arden, but you don't know what that jungler is. And, of course, Arden, very flexible support, really can work with almost any junglers, but typically you may see a Glaive come out here, or you may see even an Assassin, so that Arden pick doesn't reveal too much.
Yeah, and you know, Arden's just one of those supports that is overall good into pretty much any comp. He works well with essentially everybody, and he works well into essentially everybody, so you know, huge pickup there. It's just a really safe roam pickup for you. So, you know, I like the draft so far. We already discussed how strong this Vox is. But the Glaive Lance do have a really good positioning advantage into this Vox. You know, if they're able to reposition the Vox close enough and let Gwen get that high burst damage down, then, you know, I can see it working out well for them. They just have to be really careful about it as well.
And it was actually really pretty good to take away the glaive because Art and glaive also synergize really well. So that may have been what they were going to pick. Now, they do go with the alpha pick. This is a great pick into a melee bruiser comp like you would have with the Lance and with the glaive. So, you know, Lance can do a lot of crowd control, but he's not really good. I mean, Alpha's, you know, going to keep doing damage, and even if Alpha gets stunned, Alpha has that regeneration to be able to stay active, to stay alive in these fights, and deal with that crowd control to some extent. So, you know, I expect the Alpha play to be really good into the glaive competition, but I think the real story here is the fact that G2 does have this this Vox in the lane. This is definitely going to be really, really hard to deal with into the late game.
It is indeed. You know, we discussed that earlier in that North America and East Asia have put a lot of priority on the Vox pick, and, you know, that Poison Shiv build seems to be really strong. So we know Hundor is just incredibly efficient on this hero, and then we have Dark Potato on Alpha, who is a good counter for this glaive in the jungle. Yes, they have a lot of repositioning that can make Alpha's ultimate harder to land, but there's still, because of the low cooldowns and gap closing on Alpha, she's able to get back in the fight, get those aftershock procs down, and can really be a nuisance for this glaive and Lance combination.
No, absolutely. We'll just have to wait and see how it all plays out. We're getting into the fold here as G2 on B side looking to move into position. We do see a slower rotation. We see a backside rotation here to start the game by Rising Lotus. This is what we kind of see from a lot of teams as a cautionary start. Allows them to secure at least their back farm, even if a heavy engage comes in. Now, with an Alpha, you don't expect that kind of engage. Alpha's really not going to be menacing in the first few levels of her abilities. You know, she's level 2, even level 3, she's not quite as menacing, so she's also starting in the backside. This does allow, though, a little bit of pressure here in the lane, as the support can rotate up here if he needs to. Instead, Kinu Nakoa just chooses to kind of put some vision down, and this is actually really interesting. Is able to keep an eye. Hell's Devil's doing a pretty aggressive push here from positioning to keep an eye, see if he can get some vision. So right now, both supports really just focusing on getting information on either team.
Yeah, indeed. And, you know, one thing I do want to note is that we didn't see, you know, we typically see the laners will rotate down for that first bit of experience and gold share out of the jungle. And that's just not something that we see out of Europe. And, you know, Dark Potato getting very aggressive here on this glaive. The glaive does have his afterburn up, but, you know, he's going deeper into the enemy territory with not a whole lot of health to continue clearing farm. Looks like Arden's going to chase him down, may be able to stop the recall, but just not in time.
Yeah, Arden doesn't get the recall. Dark Potato doing a great job on this Alpha. You know, one of the things, Alpha may not have a lot of damage options early, but she's got that sustain from the Infinite Reboot. She can, you know, she had it ready to go, so even if she had died there, the Arden too gives a little bit of sustain thanks to the Vanguard. So, you know, when you're going into an Alpha Arden early, they may not be really great at necessarily applying a ton of damage early, but they're really, really hard to take down.
They're really hard to take down, which gives them a lot more time to get damage down. And in addition, when you don't have items built in the early game, you know, we're going to see the utility glaive. Obviously, he didn't go with a weapon blade or you know, anything of that nature. So the damage from the glaive just isn't there either, you know. So Dark Potato on this Alpha is able to put down just a little bit more damage because of the just the scaling of his actual abilities. So the Core Overload, you know, does a decent amount of damage in the early game compared to Glaive that doesn't have any offensive build. But now that we have the Storm Crown, or the Stormguard banner built on Glaive, he'll have a little bit quicker clear, and that should help him deal with the Alpha a little bit better.
Oh, absolutely. So we do see in the lane, it's Keanu Nakoa and Hundor. They are continuing to just be able to apply the pressure they need to. You actually see this Vox, even with his short range, is able to apply resonance damage quite easily, actually. So you see it's going toe-to-toe with Merciless, and when you take a look at just, you know, the CS, it's really dead even. So Vox can sometimes struggle early on in a game when she's going up against longer range, but Gwen doesn't really apply enough pressure to give Vox any issues here in the early part. We do see in the jungle, though, Rising Lotus maybe pushed a little too far, takes a little bit of damage and backs out, is going to be quite happy with just getting their bottom 2 shot minions. And now we are going to see possibly contention here over the Elder Treant. Now this is, you know, interesting. After a few rotations, you know, you've got a little bit of time to burn. You don't really have to rotate back yet because your back minions aren't up. So now just a little bit of decision making between both teams if they're going to contest this. And Dark Potato now looks to go in. Just a few seconds. does not get it. It's gonna go over to Agony, and so with Glaive he's got that healing. You got to be a little bit careful. G2 is going to back away.
You do have to be a little bit careful. I think that Dark Potato was still healthy enough that he could have really stayed in the fight there. The reason being is he still has the infinite reboot. So yes, Glaive does get a little bit of health back from that Treant. But Dark Potato, you have a whole nother life as well as the Arden Vanguard. So you have a lot of tankiness and sustain, and you really have more damage than Glaive through most parts of the game.
Yeah, especially as the crystal items start to come in, and you see already building towards that aftershock. It's definitely going to provide that burst that the Alpha would like to have as she engages. The Vox really going to be more of the sustained damage dealer here as we get into the mid game. But right now, it's pretty neck and neck. Rising Lotus actually has a slight gold lead. It's just because they've really been so even. You can see it's almost not even much of a lead to talk about. 200 gold, which is just, what, half a rotation, if that. But it goes to show you how both teams are being very conservative so far, Day.
Yeah, both teams are being very conservative. I do want to note Hundor has gone for a Sorrow Blade first on this Vox. So a little different than the typical North American and East Asia builds that we see, where they go with that Poison Shiv really early, which gives you a lot of sustain. And one of the huge things that the Poison Shiv offers is that reduced healing from the fountain. And Vox is one of the best heroes to get that proc down because your Sonic Zoom applies 2 basic attacks. So you're able to get that 3 basic attack chain off very early in a fight, and it provides so much utility for your team.
Absolutely. Lot. Aftershock is complete for Dark Potato, as that is going to be a huge power spike here as we approach the mid game. Rising Lotus needs to be definitely cautious of that. We do see Glaive has that Storm Crown as well. There's a little bit of engage. Rising Lotus going in, but Dark Potato is able to get onto the Gwen. Look at that damage coming out. A lot from that proc from the Aftershock. And you see Dark Potato able to just get out, not taking very much damage here. The nice root from that Impale. As Rising Lotus now looking to just keep an eye, maybe protect this turret here a little bit, as good Githian wall onto G2 to apply some of that damage, and another root lands onto Alpha. So right now, Hell's Devil doing a fantastic job just applying really poke damage from the Lance to ensure that, you know, that the engage from G2 is kept at bay.
They are doing a very good job on this Lance. Indeed, you know, the double root followed by the triple Githian wall for the stun against the lane wall there. You know, just very well played out of Hell's Devil. We see this Gwen has gone towards a tension bow build, which really is going to be dependent on getting Hundor down on this Vox. So we're going to have to see Agony and Hell's Devil able to solo out this Vox where Gwen is going to be able to get that damage down, because Gwen is not going to have the sustain to kill Alpha while Vox is alive. So high risk, high reward build. You may be able to get Vox off the table very quick in the fight, but you're also very reliant on that. If you don't delete Vox immediately, then the fights are very heavily going to start to swing to the side of G2.
Absolutely. Yeah, a lot of burst potential from Rising Lotus, but again, when you've got both the Glaive and the Tension Bow coming out of the Gwen, you're definitely going to rely on getting onto a target and focusing. A lot of teamwork's going to be required. There's a nice root onto the Vox. Vox afterburn, and there's a Gauntlet. Gets canceled out. Kayano Nakoa is not able to get that, but they still are able to pick up the kill onto Merciless. And this is not a bad position there. You see a root lands onto Dark Potato. He still has, but there is G2. Hondora goes down. The Vox is out. Agony, though, is taking a lot of damage. There is an infinite reboot up and active for Dark Potato. One more turn shot would have brought him down, so he's nice position to get out of that fight. And Keanu Nakoa, as a support man, you gotta imagine if he had gotten that gauntlet down, they would have had even a little bit of a better leverage. Instead, the fight goes about even, a trade apiece between both teams.
Yeah, the gauntlet falling just a little short, but I did want to note, you know, Hundor was able to be put out of position by Agony on this Glaive, but the Arden, like we were discussing earlier, just functions so well with everybody because the utility that Vanguard offers. He was able to negate a lot of the burst, including that Tension Bow proc from the Gwen very early in that fight, which allowed Hundor to really build up inside of that fight, get the kills down. He did end up falling later on in the fight, but overall a good trade going over to the side of G2.
Yeah, not a bad trade at all. But I think the real story here is the fact that Rising Lotus, going into the #1 seed G2, at least from last season, is performing very well. They're holding their own here in the mid game. Alpha is going to scale pretty strong. We see another engagement in the lane. Again, a disengage from Rising Lotus. At this point, they are really being cautious on how they engage, looking to get that lance to land it in Impale before they commit to a fight, which is really a smart way to initiate, and it gives you a little bit of an edge right off the bat. But right now, I mean, you look at Hunter, he's already got the breaking point. There's a missed Impale. If they do not get that Vox taken out of the fight early, Denominate, this is going to be very bad for Rising Lotus.
Yeah, and I think they're going to have a difficult time getting the Vox out, but right now we have a gold mine started up by the side of G2, a fight going over.
There's a nice gauntlet.
Nice gauntlet, some good damage going down by Dark Potato, reposition out of Agony, keeping him off of the Lance. And this looks like it's going to be a gold mine going over to G2, unless if Rising Lotus can come over and save it.
Yeah, they're looking to come in. They have actually got more health thanks to that healer treant. You can see Dark Potato does not secure it to get the wall by the Lance that gets the gold mine. And of course, unfortunately, a termination protocol out of Dark Potato is going to put him at a huge disadvantage. He does still go in. He wants to kill onto the Gwen. He's not going to get it just yet, but they look to re-engage one more time. Merciless is getting very low. There's an Atlas. It lands. One more attack. There goes Dark Potato into it. He's going to get 2 for 1 as he almost gets Agony. Does not quite get it. And nice punt back by Agony to get that Vox out of position. So not a bad engagement from G2. They don't get 2 kills, but they do get a little bit of more pressure in the jungle. And unfortunately, though, lose out on a gold miner in the process.
They do lose out on the gold mine. And, what an incredible steal out of Hell's Devil on this Lance. One thing we really got to note out is G2's awareness to the comp and what their win condition is. They know that they've got to prevent the damage from Gwen, and Hundor just barely making it out, and it looks like Keanu Nakoa is going to go down for his trouble, but did manage to save his laner.
Oh, he did. Wow, he saw Merciless, identified the low Vox, knew he had the burst damage to get the kill if he could just get 2 auto attacks on. Got the one from the buckshot, not able to finish it off. But look at this lane's open now, and it's Rising Lotus coming in here. They've got a glaive with the Storm Crowd. They're going to get this turret. This is a huge advantage objectively for Rising Lotus here. Going up against G2 at that. Really impressed so far.
Very impressive indeed. It's not usual that we see G2 playing on the back foot like this, and I don't really want to say that it is the back foot because the fights have been very even, but that positional advantage and gold spike from that first turret is going to be huge for Rising Lotus as they go forward.
They do almost get a kill onto Hell's Devil. There's a fountain that comes out. Nice stun, though. Dark Potato is destroyed here. He's got the Termination Reboot. Does not activate it in time. There's a kill, so it's 1 trade apiece. Can Hundor get another kill? He does get a second trade. Hundor on this Vox as he approached that 15 breaking point stack. Was able to do an insane amount of damage, but not enough. And really, unfortunately for Dark Potato, getting stunned under turret and taking so much damage without able to dish it back, put that entire team fight in the hands of Rising Lotus. So they're going to have to be happy with the 2-for-2 trade there, Denominate. And really, Rising Lotus is doing a great job at just keeping G2 at bay.
They're doing a very good job keeping G2 at bay, but I think part of that attributes to the fact that G2 is playing maybe just a little too aggressive with this Lance. We've seen him a couple times try to dive kills underneath the turret, and the chain CC from this glaive and Lance just makes it impossible for Dark Potato to get the damage down when you have that turret there that is so easy for you to be knocked up against by the Githian wall.
Yeah, timing that reflex block to ensure that you're able to get the most damage without taking too much of that crowd control would be important. Dark Potato's doing his best, but it's hard when you've got that much. A Crucible from Arden would definitely be helpful here, I think, because it will allow him, once he gets that item, and you have to imagine Arden's going to build into a Crucible eventually. It'll give an additional block. You see, there's another gold mine going over to Rising Lotus as Dark Potato tried to contest. They're going to have to disengage from this fight as well, but Rising Lotus, they know how low Dark Potato is, so they decide to go in, root it onto the Vox. There's another effective Gifted wall. The Vox, wait for it, comes out though, and now it's, can they take out Hondor fast enough? They can. Hondor goes down. Now it's Dark Potato trying to do the damage. He's right in a cover. He is able to get onto the Gwen, but he's dropping so low. There's a kickback. There comes the Termination Protocol. It does not land on anybody, and it's going to be Rising Lotus winning this fight. Unbelievable fashion. You do see the Alpha trying to re-engage here on the glaive, and Arden gets away, but that fight definitely going in favor of Rising Lotus again.
You know, it was really good for them to get Hundor down very early in that fight. He's playing a little too forward, a little too vulnerable to the repositioning ability that Rising Lotus does bring to the table. And you know, we see both of the laners have completed their third build. We have a Breaking Point Bonesaw Sorrowblade out of Hundor, and we have a Sorrowblade Tension Bow Breaking Point out of this Gwen, Merciless on this Gwen. So if Hundor can stay on the back of the fight and build up stacks on the Glaive and the Lance, that is going to be their most ideal scenario, because they did really good focusing early on knowing that Gwen is all the damage of the enemy team, and they already have 2 Atlases built. They've had 2 Atlases since 10 minutes in the game. So if they can prevent the damage that that this Gwen is able to put out, then they're going to fare a lot better in these fights, and it's just going to be about Hundor making sure he positions himself safely.
Yeah, we expect. There comes another Atlas out of the Glaive. I was going to say we expect that, because they have to obviously watch out if Hundor takes any of those Atlases. He's only got 1 block at this moment. He's going to be drastically mitigated as far as damage outsource. I think really that's huge is the gold lead and objective advantage going in favor of Rising Lotus. They've gotten 2 gold mines in a turret. That's a huge lead for them. G2 has to be really, really careful as they approach these engagements, knowing that they are at least a half an item behind.
Yeah, they are indeed a little bit behind, you know, that 2,500 gold lead over to the side of Rising Lotus, which, you know, for them coming into the #1 seed of G2 and doing this well has to feel good.
Absolutely, we do see there's an Impale. It lands. Nice engage coming out. Possibly Rising Lotus thinking about it, decides to back away. G2 though is sitting there near that tri-bush, just keeping an eye, see if they can see if Rising Lotus kind of comes in. There's an Impale onto Hundor again. Hundor getting caught quite often actually in these fights. That has been very challenging. Hundor gets stunned up. They're looking to go in, but here goes Dark Potato. Now he's right at ledge that wall. He has to be careful for those Gizzy walls to come out. There comes a Gauntlet. Doesn't trap up anyone. And there's an Ace's High that lands on the Hundor. The crowd control coming out of Rising Lotus has just been unbelievably on point right now. Rising Lotus goes in again, blocked by Keanu Nakoa to stop that Impale, because right now G2 is running for their lives.
Yeah, and we really have to attribute a lot of the lack of positioning out of G2 here again. You know, the reason all that crowd control came through on Hundor that last fight is because, again, Dark Potato got a little bit low, decided to back off to the other side of Hundor, and Hundor stayed there on the front line instead of kiting backwards like we would like to see a Vox do when the fight's not going well. That allows you some time to build up the Breaking Point stacks, the Bonesaw stacks. I'm not too happy with the positioning out of G2 right now. They're the #1 seed European team. You know, they went really far in the Unifying Finals, and I'd really like to see them tighten up their gameplay a little bit here.
Absolutely. We'll have to see if that happens. They do have a Vox and Alpha that are going to be very difficult into the late game as you go into a Gwen and a Glaive here. Alpha looks to jump in. They get onto the Gwen. Merciless takes a little bit of damage. There comes the Atlas's attack speed slowed onto Vox and the Gwen as they go trading back and forth. Here comes the Fountain out of G2 and a missed Impale finally, as Hundor is not going to get trapped down. Dark Potato goes in one more time, gets the kill. He finds Hell's Devil, gets the 2nd kill, and Dark Potato at the slimmest margin of health, able to pick up 2 kills. As it's actually Vox that gets credited for the kill, but the engagement from Dark Potato right now has just been absolutely phenomenal, as they are able to finally win one of these team fights. And you have to imagine as we get farther and farther into the late game that this is going to become more of a common occurrence. They have to watch out though. This Glaive Agony looking to come in. He could possibly steal this Kraken right from underneath their noses.
He indeed could. The Glaive offers a lot of burst potential between objective-wise with the Aftershock and the Storm Crown, but he did go in a little bit too early there. He wasn't able to commit that last hit towards the Kraken. So that's going to be a Kraken going over to the side of G2. It's going to give them their health and energy back. You know, a new renewed infusion coming out of Dark Potato here. Hundor sitting on about a half infusion. And then the Gwen and Lance are infused, and Glaive has one sitting in his pocket.
Well, now they've started to bring this gold lead back into check. They've got a Kraken pushing with them as well. G2 now looking to let this late game composition really highlight what they kind of were hoping this game would look like, as now it's really just going to come dependent on mechanics here as we get into the late game. Can they isolate the Vox? Because this is something Rising Lotus, when they did early, were very successful. Dark Potato Prime Directive going the wrong way, as is not able to engage yet, but there comes a nice gauntlet. Does trap in Agony. Agony's got to be careful here as he looks to go in attack speed slowed onto both Vox and the Alpha, as they forces G2 just to be a little bit more cautious. Re-engage by G2. There comes the wait for it. They're going in. G2 wants this fight. They want the kill, but they're taking so much damage and so much crowd control. And look at that. Hell's Devil really doing a work onto the side of G2. All of that CC chained up together. Really, look how low health they are. It's forcing G2 to run all the way back away from the fight there as the Kraken has fallen.
The Kraken has fallen, but they did get that choke point turret down, which is huge for the side of G2. We see the engage coming out here. Everybody on G2 still low from that last fight, though. I'm not sure I like the choice here. Dark Potato does miss his ult as well. Hundor drops dangerously low. In fact, dies to Glaive. And you know, Dark Potato does find a little bit of light in the darkness there and finds the kill on Hell's Devil. But you know, now he's running from a Gwen and a Glaive, so it's, you know,
could be really hard.
It could be really hard. He does not have that additional life because he's already used the termination protocol. That is an ace going over to the side of Rising Lotus. They're probably going to get a turret, maybe 2 out of it. 2 is definitely going to be risky, though, with these death timers getting lower and lower for Hundor and Kiana Nakoa, but they'll definitely get this one.
Yeah, man, it really sucks. G2 just needed to run a little bit farther. They actually stopped and paused at the shop, at the jungle shop, and that was exactly where Rising Lotus was hoping they would be. You saw how fast the Glaive came rushing in, and now Rising Lotus, they're going to get a substantial gold lead here thanks to the taking away the backside of the jungle from G2. And G2, man, really surprised how even this game is. There's still the potential for G2 to come right back into this, because once this Alpha builds out some more additional damage and the sustain that she has from the defense, it's going to be harder to bring down that Alpha without taking a lot of damage in the process. So, you know, you have to consider the fact that the Alpha is still a few items away from her peak build here, and the game is still even enough. Actually, 1 turret advantage going over to G2.
Yeah, and you know, one thing we really got to point out here on these builds is Hundor, you know, really prioritizing building into the late game here with this Bone Saw. And you know, we have the tier 3 armor now out of both Hundor and this Gwen. So as these fights go on, we're going to see a lot more damage starting to come out of Hundor.
Oh my goodness, great surprise attack. They got onto Dark Potato, took a lot of damage, but this is an Alpha. You can't just knock her back once. She's going to get right back up, as the Vox was not the target, unfortunately, in that fight. Was able to get away, and Hundor still sitting at decent health. Dark Potato's the one that really needs to be careful here, as they're going to disengage from this fight. Recall in order. That was a nice position from Rising Lotus. They found a spot where they weren't going to get spotted out right away, and they were able to engage. And Day, this is actually pretty impressive. Rising Lotus taking advantage of the fact that they have a slight gold lead, and knowing that G2 is really kind of cautious and playing very conservatively.
Yeah, they're doing a very good job, you know, punishing G2's mistakes. Kiana Nakoa a little bit low here, but you know, good engage out of Dark Potato. Was able to get the Atlas down on all 3 members, but just not enough follow-up engage out of Hundor.
Great Crucible to block that gauntlet, by the way.
Yep, great Crucible, and Hundor just really has to build up in these fights. He is very, very deep in here alone. And there we see that crowd control, him getting dangerously low, and is going to drop. You have to really work on this positioning out of Hundor here if we want to see them come back in this game. That
was absolutely wild, because Hundor was all by himself, so when they caught him in the bush, they were able to re-engage, and he had to know they were going to rotate up to that spot. I wouldn't have been that upset if it was an Alpha waiting in the bush, because Alpha's got a little bit more sustain, but you don't want the Vox to go down early. Huge mistake out of G2. This is definitely going to cost them.
It is indeed, and this, to me, this doesn't feel like that #1 seed G2. You know, we're a little early in the season still. Maybe they're, you know, maybe they've taken a little bit of time off and are getting their vainglory legs back. But, you know, we really have to see some better positioning out of Hundor on this Vox. He's playing too far forward for the amount of crowd control that Rising Lotus has brought to the table.
Absolutely. Wow, there was a Crucible accidentally procced right there out of Rising Lotus. Now, they're not going into a ton of crowd control, but if that gauntlet comes down and it's up, there's 34 seconds where Rising Lotus is going to be at a little bit of a disadvantage. I'm not sure if anybody from the side of G2 saw that, though. I think that was something that they might get away with. if they are cautious.
Absolutely. Due to lack of vision at the Kraken, they would not have seen that unless if they were just specifically looking for the particle effect, which after the Kraken's taken is probably pretty unlikely. You know, this is looking out to be a good push for the side of Rising Lotus here. You know, they have the Kraken coming down, choke point turret's already down, and they have been winning these fights just incredibly well. If they're able to keep getting Hundor out of position, then I can see them closing out the game here in the next couple minutes.
Oh man, Hell's Devil on this land, been phenomenal. Look at the damage, Hondor getting low again. This has been consistent. G2 has been unable to protect Hondor. You see Agony thinking twice before going in. There is a nice termination protocol to come in there. Does not land the damage. The last turret's about to go down. Hondor is very low. Does get dropped. Rising Lotus looking to take game number 1 against G2 in unbelievable fashion. And this is unbelievable to see this happen. G2 coming in here is probably one of the higher seeds, or at least the perspective of being higher seed. And unfortunately, getting taken out by Rising Lotus there. Oh, wow. Game 1 not going their way.
Game 1 not going their way at all. And again, Hundor's positioning in that last fight, he was just so close to Glaive at all points. Not even because the Glaive afterburned in. Hundor was just standing so close to Glaive. And, you know, Glaive doesn't have that much to sustain, but he does offer a lot of burst, which got him very low in the fight, very early, forcing out the fountain incredibly early in the fight. And Rising Lotus was able to close out when G2 realistically should have been able to at least get down the Kraken and push out another fight.
Absolutely, guys. I mean, that was a very, really impressive play. You know the Alpha's going to get more stronger as the game goes on, but Alpha's a little starved there. Only 56 CS at 24 minutes. Way below Agony. So even though there was Hondor on the lane taking more CS, the disparity between the jungles was just too much. Agony was almost ready to build that broken myth as well, but because they were so far ahead, he was just able to keep infusing. So that really not bad play by Rising Lotus, taking advantage of their lead that they had, and big mistakes coming out of G2 in that fight.
And, you know, I'm really surprised we didn't see a Poison Shiv come out on either side. It's such a great utility item that also, obviously, it gives you the damage, it gives you attack speed, and it really reduces the amount of healing and barrier that the enemy team is able to get when you have that proc off. Right. And again, the Vox just so good at keeping that proc up all the time because of his Sonic Zoom applying 2 basic attacks. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's...
it gives you, and you know, it gives you a lot of sustain too, is another thing. So definitely something we're gonna have to look out for.
No, absolutely. We are just about ready to get into draft for game number 2 here, just a few seconds. So as we get into it, by the way, guys, this is Europe, not North America, regardless of what that says, but we will be getting that updated, of course. But we will be actually bringing you guys North America broadcast for the off-stream match as well later here today. So make sure you guys tune into the Vainglory 8 broadcast. But if you want to catch these teams that are not being streamed on the main Vainglory channel, you can tune in to the VIS League, and we'll be bringing it to you guys in due time. I think we're ready to get into the draft, so I'm going to just check to see. Yeah, just a few seconds before we're ready to get into it. Let's talk a little bit, though, Exceptions, about how that played in. The Lance play by Hell's Devil was really, really phenomenal. And that's something that when you do play Arden into Lance, can be a bit of a struggle. Arden doesn't really have the same quality of crowd control. Lance has just the absolute enormous amount of crowd control. And you saw when they were fighting in those tight areas, which they often were doing, really a disadvantage really to G2 as a whole.
Disadvantage to G2 as a whole, and you must have Exceptions on the mind, because I am not Exceptions, Dragonborn.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm talking to Exceptions.
Talking to Exceptions, getting this draft going. I got you. I just got to give you a little bit of a hard time.
Thanks, Day. For everyone tuning in, though, what are you guys watching? You guys are watching the off-stream match. That's not on the Vainglory 8, but this is Vainglory 8 here. We are doing the EU match first, and we'll be bringing you guys every Saturday the off-stream matches here for both EU and North America. I'm Dragonborn. I'll be your host almost every Saturday, and joining me most Saturdays as well, it will be Denomine, my co-caster, an analyst we're both North America bound, but we do keep an eye on EU. We've been watching, of course, a lot to digest when we came out of Live Championship with how improved EU was. And Dave, you and I had actually talked a lot about this before the Unified Live Championships, and of course, as we get into the season, I feel like it's even more heightened, is Europe has really improved as a region to the point where they are no longer this region that NA can just ignore. They really do offer intense competition. They learned how to play the early and mid games. They learned also to show that when you do go to late game, they can really be a force to reckon with.
Yeah, and I do think late game is their comfort, but I do like the prioritization that we've seen out of Europe to be able to play those early game comps or be able to defend against those early game comps. So that is huge, and it really shows that the skill gap between North America and Europe, which we've always seen in the past has been very dominant for North America. We didn't see as much dominance in the unified finals that we, may have expected. Europe has really brought their A game to the table. They've opened up their drafts. For one, we're definitely see them able to move into those early game comps. And, that's huge that they now offer both ends of the spectrum that they can bring to the table.
Yeah, one of the things that's also developed over the last couple of months is the fact that Baron, a predominantly late-game laner, has become the #1 pick, contested in every single match. And as we get into this next game, we do see Grumpjaw banned, no surprise. You have to imagine because they want that Baron to be left open. So and actually what's cool about banning Grumpjaw is it does force the decision by Rising Lotus to ban either Baron or Vox. They're going to go with the Baron.
They are going to go with the Baron, which leaves the Vox open, which to me, again, Hundor is a very good Vox. We got to see a little bit better positioning out of him and maybe go into that Poison Shiv build that we see a lot out of EA in North America. Gives you a lot of sustain, a lot of damage, a lot of utility, and it makes Vox a nuisance at pretty much all parts of the game. Vox we normally talk about is a usually late game prioritized hero. That Poison Shiv utility build that he brings to the table really makes him a threat at all points of the game.
Absolutely. What's really interesting is the fact that, they weren't able to pick Vox first here. They thought a lot about this. G2 goes into bonus time on the first pick saying, all right, we don't want to first pick Vox. That's just too much information to give over to the side of Rising Lotus, which is an enormous amount of respect to give to them. They do go with the Arden pick here, and you have to imagine that is because they feel like that's a smart pick. It allows them to be a little bit protective here. The Lyra is going to be picked on the side of Rising Lotus, which is a great, fantastic pick if you're worried about some of those dive compositions. And so this is going to have to force G2 into a poke-heavy comp.
It does. The Lyra does offer a lot of sustain. We do see the Vox come off the table here, which I think is a smart ban out of the side of Rising Lotus. The Glaive quickly to follow suit, not burning any bonus time out of the side of G2 there. Lyra offers a lot of sustain to your teammates, but she doesn't have a lot of defense for herself. So if you go with a hero that has a lot of upfront poke, a Kestrel, a Sky, a Samuel, someone of that nature, you can really poke out the Lyra, burn out the cooldown of that Imperial Sigil incredibly early on in the fight, and then heavily engage to follow up on it. And Lyra really has to win the early game to stay as dominant as she is.
Well, Samuel, who's banned in game #1, does come out here and is not banned. So we are going to see Rising Lotus play as Samuel. G2 had banned Samuel, so clearly it's a little bit of respect to Rising Lotus on this Samuel play. We'll have to see how well it is. When we go, it's going to be a Black Feather for G2. This is likely going to be a lane Black Feather, right? There's not that many weapon laners other than maybe Kestrel or Gwen that you might see come out of both these teams. So with Samuel in the jungle, that it's Rising Lotus is going to have to pick up the weapon laner. And I think G2 really feeling like they can flex this Black Feather if they need to. So they do pick it here. Now, the last pick, this is going to kind of tell us what we're going to be seeing out of the jungle here. If it will be Black Feather in the jungle, who would be able to get onto that Samuel pretty easily, or if we're going to see something a little bit more creative out of them here. The Alpha clearly just not something Dark Potato was able to perform at the fullest, but you've got a Lyra instead of a Lance, so although it's going to be hard to get in on the targets, you don't have quite that crowd control.
We do see the Gwen come out, so I do believe it's going to be this Black Feather in the jungle. It's the only thing that really makes sense, and I do think it's going to be a Crystal Black Feather. I don't see them running a Crystal Gwen. Yes, it can be very bursty, but the amount of time that it takes a Crystal Gwen to really scale up and be useful,
It's just
Right.
with the early game potential. We talk about that Samuel all the time, that level 2 spike, and how early game dominant this Lyra is. It just, to me, would not be a safe pick. So it's going to be a Crystal Blackfeather who's going to be dueling to poke out this Samuel. The only difference being is the Arden is a lot better at blocking out that poke damage than the Lyra is.
Absolutely, and one of the things is once that Bulwark drops, the Blackfeather will be able to get on his target. Idris comes out, and this is a pick that actually is really, really strong when played correctly. It's going to be able to get onto Gwen. Gwen can prevent maybe a stun here or there, but she's not going to be able to get away from the Idris as much. So, really kind of actually surprised Rising Lotus. I feel like their composition overall, when played correctly, is going to be very powerful, and it's going to scale really well. And that's kind of something that, they had a more early game comp, and they were still able to win to the late game. Now they've got a composition that's going to be really scaling well throughout the whole game.
Yeah, and Samuel is one of those heroes that we talk about. If you play it right, you can really, you are more dominant in the late game, but you do have a huge spike at level 2. Samuel, to me, has probably the strongest level 2 early game, and then falls off in the mid game just slightly, and then really heavily ramps up again in the late game. So paired up with this Lyra, I think it gives them that edge to make it to the late game where this Samuel and Idris are really going to scale up. Idris able to jump on Gwen very easily due to his gap closers from his A and his ultimate, able to get down Atlas Pauldrons incredibly easily. It's going to be all about Hell's Devil on this Lyra, and if they can help get to the late game, and if he can time his bulwarks properly is going to be the other huge thing. Dark Potato is going to have a lot of poke on the Crystal Blackfeather, but to do any follow-up damage after that initial poke, he has to dive in. So if Hell's Devil is able to prevent that really heavy engage, then I can see Rising Lotus taking another game here off of Seed 1 G2 and having a huge performance for week 1.
Absolutely. I mean, with the new season start, it is like cleaning the slate, and of course the seedings aren't really in place yet, as you've got to earn that, and Rising Lotus definitely making a huge case. I mean, they've got a point here to start the VG8, and they have to feel pretty good about that. As we take a look into the lane here, early aggression from G2 to pressure onto the Idris, and you have to imagine they have to be fearful of this Idris scaling's potential. The Gwen here, I think, what's going to be interesting is if Hundor goes with the Tension Bow Gwen or does go with the more sustained build Gwen, where you'll see because we are on 2.5, you may still see that really, really powerful Poison Shiv that will come out on these weapon carries. In the jungle, though, we got a little bit of engagement going on, a little tussle, as it is Agony. He hit level 2, but there's the Lyra with the heal. Dark Potato now taking that damage, and that's exactly what we've seen with the Samuel late game. Look how strong he has already gotten, and now they're all 3 members of Rising Lotus coming down here, looking to get on to... They found Hundor. They're continuing to apply this damage, and this is so dangerous for G2. First blood going to go over to Rising Lotus. Unbelievable.
Yeah, and that's definitely the hero you don't want to give first blood to, is this Samuel. Agony, had a good display last game on the... and Hundor does find the kill, but Agony does find a second kill onto Dark Potato, and, Agony really showing that he can be this dominant jungler. He played the Glaive last game incredibly well, was able to get the repositioning down on Hundor, who was on the box, and, now he's coming in on this Samuel and really abusing that level 2 spike, so... Very well played out of the side of Rising Lotus, coming into the beginning week here and just showing that they deserve to be here.
Absolutely. Really impressed overall. And I like their composition as we get into this. Not too much. I mean, just an early game going over to them since they got that early first blood kill. Hunter taking a lot of damage. Hell's Devil, he's unbelievable support play these last 2 games. And so far in the Lyra, helping just apply the pressure. And the Idris paired up with the Lyra. The Lyra, look at that, able to land the sigils, able to land some attacks, keeping Hundor so far back. Now he's got to contest with this turret.
He does, and, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Rising Lotus come into this season, wasn't he in Challengers weren't they in Challengers last season, and now they just broke into the VG8?
Well, Rising Lotus has been in and out of the VG8 a couple times, getting knocked down the Challengers and coming back into it. So they're one of those teams that definitely come in, but we gotta fight. It is Rising Lotus. Agony, he's level 4, a level above everybody else. He looks to get on the Dark Potato. Lyra is gonna drop here, but this could be Agony getting 2 kills. I'm not sure if he's gonna get onto the Arden in time. No, Arden's gonna be able to get away, but this opens up the jungle for Agony here. In the lane, we do have Hundor taking a little bit of damage from Merciless too, and so far, this is just really wild to see Rising Lotus just coming in there. There's Canoe going down, and Keanu Nakoa dropping as Dark Potato takes more damage. This Samuel is just absolutely on fire right now.
Yeah, and you know, this is what we discussed when Samuel was banned away the first game, is we don't really see Samuel as that dominant of a hero. You know, he's very difficult to play at times because of how dependent you are on the positioning. But Agony, you know, really showing that he can play this hero. So I really think that Samuel ban from game 1 was targeted to Agony, just because we don't see Samuel really banned by any teams ever. So, you know, maybe that was smart of G2 to take it off in the first game, but, you know, it still didn't work out to their favor. So Rising Lotus really bringing their A game to the table, really showing that, you know, you can't take me off of a comfort pick.
Yeah, I mean, and you have to imagine that Samuel ban game 1 was really much for Agony Samuel, because he has been playing phenomenally, and this is really something to be feared, and G2 respecting that, but not able to get the win in game 1. Now they're on the Gwen. They are going to go with this burst tension, which is a little bit risky. They need more sustain. You definitely want to be careful, because the Agony is going to be able to get a lot of sustain after he gets that Eve build on the Samuel. So now you're going into a lot of damage and sustain. We have a fight in the jungle, 2v2 between both supports and junglers. Agony going in, and look at the damage. There's just no crowd control to stop the Samuel from pushing, and look, he's able to get another kill. Samuel 5-1-0. This guy is just lighting it up here. Rising Lotus looking like they are ready to move on to the semifinals.
They are indeed, and you know, we do talk about this tension bow on Gwen. There's going to be a lot of sustain out of the Lyra, which is why I feel the tension bow is kind of a risky pick. However, the 2 carries on the side of Rising Lotus are pretty squishy, so the tension bow proc does do a lot for you. This Samuel just being so strong, though, just so dominant, you know, into this early and mid game. You know, we're not seeing the Blackfeather be able to complete items the way we'd like to see. You know, 7 CS ahead on Agony, already has that Frostburn, and we just don't have the poke damage yet out of the side of G2.
Yeah, I mean, this is really tough for them. I mean, Arden's only level 4, so he's a little bit, you know, he's not going to have that gauntlet control up. Pretty even with Hell's Devil, but it's just been very tough. Hundor at level 5, you know, just you know, having to go up against the level 7 Samuel is just so much. The deciding factor here, though, is the fact that Blackfeather, because it's Crystal, does a lot of poke, but if he misses 1 on point, he's just going to be decimated here in the jungle, or even if he rotates up to lane. So it's something to keep an eye on. All 3 members of Rising Lotus now, they have come into the jungle. On point misses, so he's got to get out of there. Dark Potato not able to really get a lot of working on with this Blackfeather. And there's Idris going in, does get the kill with the ult onto the support, onto Keanu Nakoa. He drops. The lane's going to push. Rising Lotus now in great shape to put pressure onto this turret.
Yeah, and you know, really good Shimmer Strike out of this Idris. You know, able to use that gap close ability. You know, sees that he has a safe engage there. Turret does go down for the side of Rising Lotus there, which is going to be 900 gold in their pocket. Hell's Devil doing a very good job keeping his team healthy for these fights. And Dark Potato not yet level 8. He did catch up to Agony, though. You know, we talked about the level 5 to level 7 difference earlier. He is now caught up in level. You know, we're still at a gold disadvantage, but you know, getting closer to that level 8 where he has the extended range of his on point is huge for this Crystal Blackfeather.
Yeah, Agony does hit level 8 here. That's a big spike here because he's maxed out his Malice and Verdict, so now those are going to be dealing a tremendous amount of damage. He's also just a few, I think with just 1 item purchase left to get to that Eve of Harvest as well. He's building out to that as well. There's going to be a gold mine going the way of Rising Lotus. They've got the turret objective. Dark Potato might be able to come in here and steal it. Does not, and he's caught out. He's going to have to bail out of here as fast as he can Takes a lot of damage, but survives as he avoids that disaster. Rising Lotus right now doing an insane amount of damage as they are looking to hit a very big power spike here to the mid game. So you're talking about how Samuel does fall off just a tad, but when you're this far ahead, it's not really noticeable. And Agony's showing that right now. He just has to get to that second tier 3 item, and it'll definitely be very, very hard to contest, especially with that sustain from the E.
And you know, we talk about Samuel falling off slightly in the mid game. That's usually due to junglers that have a little bit heavier of an engage, you know, a Taka or a Kashka, who have a big spike at level 6, you know, the Yummy Catnip Frenzy or the X-Retsu. We don't have that out of Dark Potato. The Crystal Blackfeather is very poke heavy, a very poke heavy hero. So he doesn't have that heavy engage that we need to see to shut down that Samuel in the mid game, which is really just allowing Agony to just continue to ramp up very quickly.
Exactly. Shatterglass is built on Dark Potato, but that's all he's got right now. Barely any defense. Definitely a challenge. Hunter's really the only one that's got some decent damage. Has an infusion in the bank. Actually, so does Dark Potato. So they're looking to try to contest this next fight with these mid-game infusions, and this is definitely critical. They cannot let this go to waste. This will be a huge disadvantage. You see, there comes the damage out. The infusions are still being held. Looking to probably catch them here in the fight with the gauntlet that comes in, but look at the dive out of the gauntlet. Nice blocks from the side of Rising Lotus as they are able to reposition the Lyra's heal, keeping them alive as they keep pushing in. It's Hundor. He's the one who's going to drop, and Agony trying to find the last few shots on the Dark Potato. Does not get it. Does he find one more? Oh, it's going to be Merciless with the final kill, and an ace going over to Rising Lotus. Rising Lotus tearing G2 apart.
They're doing a very good job indeed, and you know, one thing we really need to see out of Kiana Nakoa here is the amount of upfront damage that Samuel's able to put down. We need to see a double shield build come out of Kiana Nakoa here very, very quickly. You know, getting that tier 2 shield where he's able to front line the damage a little better. What that's going to do is it's going to cause Agony to have to burn a lot of his energy trying to poke. And if Kiana Nakoa can block out that damage until the Drifting Dark is down and then engage with the Gauntlet, we're going to see a lot better fights come out of G2.
Oh, Hundor deleted!
Dark Potato.
It's unbelievable damage, and you see the broken... Agony, because they're so far in the game, they're so in head, he goes with the Broken Myth instead of the Eve, and that's a great decision, knowing that defensively, he's really got the sustain he needs. He's a few levels ahead of everybody, and also a few items ahead of everybody, so he can just keep putting on that damage instead of going for a sustain item, and that just makes even more painful for the side of G2, as that was just a blow-up.
That was indeed, and you know, again, we talk about the positioning of G2. You can't play that close together. Kiana Nakoa needs to get more shield and really tank out that frontline damage, and then have that heavy engage. With Hundor playing so far up, trying to get damage down because of the range of Agony when he has the Malice and Verdicts up, he's putting himself at a position where the Samuel is able to get very easy splash damage down, and that is a gold payout going over to the side of Rising Lotus here. And huge damage coming out of the side of G2, but just as much coming out of Rising Lotus here. And Dark Potato should be able to get out with Kiana Nakoa here.
He's got to watch out because Merciless is going to be able to get a speed boost and a heal. And one more chakra will do it if he can get on there. Does find instead Keanu. He's going to just instead focus on this, taking out the support. I mean, that was a little bit of life. Oh, nice dodge by Keanu. He's going to get found by the Lyra, so not able to survive that just yet. Whoa, oh my, I spoke too soon. That Vanguard.
Kiana Nakoa getting out. Huge play out of him there.
That was huge.
I don't know if he needed to be put into that position. Dark Potato could have just continued to run and escape. Instead, it looked like he thought about engaging the Idris underneath the Crystal Sentry there. Deciding the full health Idris was a little too big of a fish to catch there underneath the Sentry with as low as he was. You know, overall a 1-for-1 trade though for G2, especially it being the Samuel that dropped. That's a decent bounty coming out.
Which I like.
They just can't group up like this and take the splash damage though.
Absolutely. Rising Lotus looking to engage again. G2 at this point forced to just run away. Nice scout trap. Catches the side of G2. Puts the vision on him as well. But the Crystal Sentry is going to be a bully enough to keep Rising Lotus cautiously at bay, right? They're just keeping an eye, thinking about going in, but not committing to that fight. I think G2 knew that they had a little bit of an advantage here One of the things I think really what has to happen out of G2 is they need to bring in Rising Lotus to that Crystal Sentry, make them commit to that fight, maybe candy it if they can. But I think Rising Lotus showing them right there that they're smart enough to not dive quite that far in, even if they are ahead.
Yeah, and I can't stress enough how much we need to see more shield come out of Kiana and Nakoa here. If you can block all of the damage from Samuel's Drifting Dark being down, if you can block all those Empowered Malice and Verdicts, it gives your team a lot safer of an engage. But, being this far behind, we see Samuel almost at his third item here, and Dark Potato not even able to complete his second yet, working into that Broken Myth. So,
Dark Potatoes, he's been starved both games, really struggling to find that dominance. He's really been putting his entire team kind of at a disadvantage. It's a challenge, something you might need to have to work on here, because the jungle is still very critical, and when your laner, Hundor, he's doing the best he can, but when they're losing the jungle so decisively, you end up just losing the lane as well, even if you're still staying neck and neck in farm. I mean, look at farm, it is neck and neck. Just 2 CS the difference. Dark Potato just trying at this point now to turtle up a little bit, get some of this farm, try to get back into it. He's actually really, really close to getting that Broken Myth. Maybe 2 more minutes and he'll have it. So they just almost need to wait to fight until that's completed.
Yeah, and one thing that we really gotta point out is a little interesting here is we normally see the Idris builds going a lot more in the offensive. A good steal coming out, it looked like of Dark Potato there. It indeed was Dark Potato, able to secure that camp, a little silver lining there. But, now that Idris has all that defense and it looks like he's now working into a third offensive item, he's going to start bringing a lot more damage to the table also, which you really have to abuse in the early game. Is you got to try to, force the offense out of the Idris, and we're not able to see that. So moving into the late game here, it's going to be incredibly difficult. Agony has this third item built on Samuel, that Eve of Harvest, and is now starting to work into some defense of his own. The Kraken is now awakened. One good fight out of the side of Rising Lotus here could spell demise for the side of G2.
Yeah, but G2's been given a little bit of a breather and a reprieve because they've been able to farm here with very little contest. And this back's going to allow them to start buying a few more items. Dark Potatoes, yeah, I was going to say, very close to picking up that Broken Myth. He is going to get it. And that is an item he so desperately needed. He still needs a little bit more defense as well. His infusion is almost out, as Hunter has a few more minutes for that. So I think at this point they just need to wait a few more seconds. Instead, they're going to go in for the fight. They go in. Crucible is burnt too soon, but Agony's going to be able to get out of the fight. Nice job by putting the Oblivion right in there. But look at this. G2 is doing a lot of damage. They were able to time it. They still had that infusion for the last few seconds, but the Samuel has turned it around. And the damage coming out of him, and look at how much heal he's just picked up. He's already back to full health. Hundor
Dark Potato does find a kill, though.
He does find it, but I mean, I think this is the end of it. And with that, with just 2 turrets left, this is going to be a Kraken. This is the ace. This is likely going to be game for Rising Lotus if they can close it out.
Yeah, and that fight was looking really good at first for the side of G2. They had that really heavy engage. The problem is they waited a little too long after the Drifting Dark was down. It was only on about a 5-second cooldown at the point that they engaged really heavily. Whereas if they would have gone in a little bit earlier and, caught that cooldown on a 15, 16 second cooldown, then they would have had a lot more potential in that fight to get a little bit more done. Hundor may be able to come in and get a steal down here.
Oh, he's so close. And oh, he does. He gets the steal.
He does get it.
Huge steal for the side of G2. It does slow the bleeding, but all 3 members of G2 are here. And the game is
huge block coming out of Agony there, blocking that ace high.
Oh.
However, Hundor does get caught out here. That is going to be Dark Potato going down. Also, if they can find the ace on Kiana and Nakoa, they do have a wave moving into the base. They may be able to just base race if they're able to get the ace down here. And there's the ace.
Yeah, they see that. You just see
that looks like what's going to go on. Good portal coming down, saving a little bit of time, allowing the team to catch up. That ace minion is still alive, bringing down the shield of that turret. Agony not noticing at first that the turret still had a shield there. That is going to be both turrets going down, and unless if G2 can find an ace here, this should be Rising Lotus winning the game.
Oh no, I think Merciless too much health, as he's going to get the win. And Rising Lotus upsetting G2 Esports, picking up the victory. An unbelievable turn of events here to see G2, who was the furthest team to get into the Regional Live Championships for EU, to drop now to Rising Lotus. Now, to be clear though, Rising Lotus has been that EU team able to pick up a lot of points the last couple of splits. And being that team, they're not, they're definitely, they haven't been the top 4 team, but they've been able to play pretty competitively in EU. And right now, coming in and showing the start of this season how strong they are.
Yeah, very, very good performance coming out, going up against, G2, who was the #1 seed last season, to bring that convincing of a victory, 2-0 both games. We really got to attribute a lot of that to Agony, though, on the jungle. His ability in Game 1 to get a lot of repositioning down on that utility glaive, which we know did have some nerfs in the 2.5 patch. Incredibly well played out of him. And then bringing that Samuel and abusing that level 2 early game spike that Samuel has, really well played out of the side of Rising Lotus.
Oh, absolutely. And with that, that is our EU off-stream match concluding. Thanks everybody for coming out. It's a really exciting matchup. And I think everybody who's been watching Vainglory 8 is probably wondering, oh man, I really want to see this match. Well, you will be able to see it. Of course, it's going to be a VOD here live on our Twitch channel, as well as on Mob Crush and on YouTube. You guys can go check it out on all 3 mediums here. But an incredible game. Rising Lotus taking the upset win over G2, and now securing 2 points and a shot at the semifinals. That is our off-stream match here for VG8 powered by VIS. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you later today for North America.